Hey guys, and welcome to my channel. Today we have a very special episode. I'm actually in Brussels, Belgium, and more specifically in Etterbeek, which is a commune of Brussels, but it's actually the place where I grew up in. This is the place where I spent most of my childhood in, and it's a beautiful winter day, so I thought, well, why not? Let's go visit this area and show you guys a typical Belgian neighborhood. Etterbeek is one out of 19 municipalities of the Brussels-Capital Region of Belgium. Like all Brussels municipalities, it is equally bilingual, French and Dutch, although most people in Etterbeek are French speakers. Behind me, we have something that is really close to my heart, and it's actually my old high school. Well, in America, it would be considered a middle school and a high school, but in Belgium, we call it école secondaire. And yeah, this is where I spent 6 years of my life, a lot of memories in it. On a fun anecdote basically of this school is that once I graduated in '99, I came back in 2003 and I talked to the headmaster and I asked him and I told him, hey, I'm a filmmaker and I'd love to use this school as one of the sets for one of my films. And he was like, cool, yeah, sure, why not? So he actually gave me the keys to the school and I was able to come on the weekends, and we filmed in the parking lot, which is located behind me, and he actually gave me access to the school itself, and we filmed in a couple of the areas of the school. And yeah, this is awesome, just so many memories here, and I'm just so glad to be back here and be able to share this with you guys. Here's a fun anecdote. So when I used to go to school here, I used to live maybe like a block away, not even, literally like 3-4 minute walk, but I used to often arrive here late. So what did I have to do? I would actually have to go through the side door, ring the bell, and then the secretary would take my name and say, oh, don't arrive late anymore. And then I'd run to the classroom and hope that the teacher hadn't taken attendance yet. But yeah, there's the main door on that side, but my main door used to be the side door. But hey, I still graduated. When I used to go to this school, we only had about 450 students total between grades 7 through 12, which is pretty interesting in retrospect when I compare it to many other schools where there are thousands of students per school and usually very overcrowded classrooms. This is something that I wanted to highlight actually, is that there are a lot of bicycle stations pretty much all over the city. Brussels, they're trying to make the city more eco-friendly. They're making it less polluted. So they're hoping that by making more bicycles available, more people will take them, and it'll limit the number of cars that go in the city and will just make the air more breathable. This bike rental program was launched in 2009 and it's comprised of 5,000 bikes in all the municipalities of Brussels, making it one of the biggest in the world. This is something that maybe people here in Belgium take for granted, but it's kind of beautiful to look at all this green stuff right here, kind of melting, but it's also frozen. I just love it. It's beautiful. Behind me, we have my old grammar school, Athénée Royale André Vésale, which I went to from grade 4 to grade 6. And the reason that I'm showing this building, other than it's a typical Belgian building, is the fact that I actually filmed my first short film, or attempt to film my first short film, right here when I was 17. We took out a camera and we started filming right here, and we didn't know what we were doing, but lo and behold, 20 years later, I'm still making movies, and this is the iconic location that started it all. This short film, or attempt to film a short film, was called Saint Fighter, and it was really just us, a bunch of kids, trying to imitate Japanese anime and video games of the time, such as King of Fighters. The film was never really completed, but it was what we needed at the time in order to prove to ourselves that we could actually film something with the very basic equipment and experience that we had. My first stunt fall was right here. At the time, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't even do gymnastics. I did a bit of martial arts, but that's it. But yeah, this is where I took my first fall, and it's not that epic when you look at the footage. So this is kind of the illusion of winter. Basically, as you can tell, it's a sunny day, but it is actually much colder than on a gray day. And as you can tell, the grass is all full of ice, and it's starting to melt and stuff. And it's also really treacherous because the floors can kind of be slippery, and that can lead to falling down. But
I guess this is typical winter in Brussels.
This is a big problem that people have during winters in Belgium, is that their windshields will often get full of ice. And the fact that we're in this snowy yet melting temperature region makes it even worse.
Behind me, we actually have the Baraque de la Police, which is basically kind of like the police academy that is located in Etterbeek, which is actually the headquarters, the biggest headquarters of the boot camps and of the training centers for police officers when they want to become police officers. And they also have a bunch of offices and stuff like that. And it's located in Etterbeek. And yeah, they're growing up here, I always used to see a lot of kind of military-like cars and stuff like that coming out of these places. But yeah, they're located right here, and the barracks are actually pretty huge. And as you can tell, it's a typical Belgian kind of building where they are using red brick. And yeah, it actually used to be much bigger, but this is what is remaining of it, and it is still quite big. And as mentioned, here is one of the kind of typical military-like cars that I would see as a kid, and I guess they're still here. But yeah, it's located right here, and there's the police academy, and obviously they need military trucks. This is the typical black ice that we will see on the streets of Belgium when it's really cold, but it's also kind of hot, so it's melting, but it's freezing at the same time. Be careful when you walk in the streets of Europe during the winter, because it is deadly. It's super slippery, you don't see it, and it's pretty darn common.
According to a survey conducted by the INRIC Traffic Survey in 2012, the city of Brussels is considered to be the most congested city in the world in terms of vehicle traffic. Luckily, Brussels has an extensive network of both private or public means of transportation. The types of public transportation offered in Brussels are trams, buses, and metros, which are all operated by the STIB, as well as railway lines operated by Infrabel and the SNCB.
As you can see behind me, we actually have a tram station, which is your typical tram station here in the city of Brussels, and everything's pretty convenient. Trams, metros, buses, they usually come every 5 to 10 minutes. Now with pandemics and all, it sometimes takes a little bit longer, but it is very convenient, and they are very regular, and yeah, they take you pretty much everywhere in the city.
When people think of Europe, they often think of narrow streets, but Brussels being the capital of Europe may actually surprise you.
Belgium may be a small country, and Brussels is, well, even smaller. Yet, I still wanted to show that the city is very modern, and we also have really, really big boulevards that go on forever, and it's not just small streets. We do live in a modern city.
Walking through my old neighborhood wouldn't be complete if I didn't visit my favorite location in Etterbeek, which is the Parc du Cinquantenaire.
Behind me, we have one of my favorite buildings in the whole of Belgium, and it's right here in the Parc du Cinquantenaire. It's actually a monument to commemorate the fact that we got the independence of Holland in 1830, and it was built in 1905. But doesn't it look beautiful and grand? It almost looks as if you're in the Roman era and you're going to go and visit Julius Caesar.
The Parc du Cinquantenaire is comprised of 74 acres, and most buildings of the U-shaped complex were commissioned by the Belgian government under the patronage of King Leopold II for the 1880 National Exhibition commemorating the 50th anniversary of the Belgian Revolution. The structures were built in iron, glass, and stone, symbolizing the economic industrial performance of Belgium.
Behind me, we have the Museum of the Army, and then if you go and look this way, we have the Museum of Aviation, and if you turn around, we have the Museum of Cars. So definitely this park has, I believe, at least 4 museums, and you really can get bored here, and it's really, really a great place to visit if you ever come to Brussels. Doesn't this look grand? I never imagined that cannons would be this big, and these are actually real cannons. Obviously they block them and you're not going to be able to shoot them and stuff, but it's still kind of cool to be able to stand next to one and to actually realize how big it is and how grand it looks. And yes, as you can see, they did block the cannons from actually shooting by putting this plate in front, and this will stop people from actually trying to shoot these things because they are real. This is the other side of the building, and yeah, as mentioned, on one side we have the Aviation Museum, on the other side we have the Car Museum, then a little bit further away we have the Army Museum. This park is so full of Just so many gems and so many treasures and so many things to explore.
Apart from the three museums that I just mentioned, the park actually hosts another notable museum, which is the Royal Art and History Museum, located in an equally epic-looking building that kind of feels like it could be some sort of presidential building located in Washington, D.C., or something like that. I know that I keep on glamorizing this park, but just look at the architecture and the detail that was put into all the sculptures and bricks that pretty much make this building look as glamorous as it is. Speaking of historic, I don't think a visit to Europe would be complete without finding some sort of castle-like structure.
What I love about Europe in general is that you can just walk in a park and what do you see? A historical castle-like building, and it just looks so cool. It gives so much character. That's one thing that I sometimes miss in America, is that it is a newer country, so there isn't as much history, and when you are in Europe you get to see, and like literally castles, and it makes me feel like, yeah, I'm in one of those movies with musketeers and all that stuff, and I just love it. So here's a typical thing that you'll find in European parks, and that is statues. I mean, this is just a perfect example of it, and it's kind of cool to have that kind of stuff outside because it almost feels as if you're going to the museum but you're in an outdoor museum.
This park doesn't just limit itself to one statue, it really has quite a few pieces of art throughout the park, really making this place so pleasant to have a stroll in. Apart from that, this park has a couple of other notable stone-like structures, such as the semi-circular Greek-looking seating area.
I wasn't kidding when I said that this building looks like Greece. Look at the columns. I feel like I'm right there.
And in case you are wondering, yes, this park does have a pretty large fountain. We are in Europe after all.
In California we have droughts. Well, in Belgium we have fountains with an abundance of water, and it's frozen because it's really cold, or semi-frozen. And yeah, it's just something that once again makes it a typical Belgian park and makes me feel so cool. And just the fact of hearing the water too, I'm sure you're hearing it, it's kind of soothing. I think so, at least.
This park really holds a lot of memories to me, as I used to come here a lot as a child and go on walks around the park with my father. Also having a lot of imagination as a kid, I had even asked my dad to follow me one day through the park as I was pretending to be James Bond on a mission to fight back the evil Mr. T. At the time we didn't have a camcorder, but my dad was kind enough to take a bunch of pictures, and at least for me, they make a very fond memory of my childhood. Close to the park and still on an exploration of Etterbeek, I went by a cafe that is pretty important in my filmmaking career.
This building behind me may look very random, but it's actually a cafe called La Fontaine, and it's located at Place Saint-Pierre in Etterbeek, and this was the location for my second short film. I actually completed it back in 2002, and it just holds a lot of memories because I did a lot of martial arts in it. My friend's parents used to actually own it. They don't own it anymore, but it's kind of cool to see it still standing and still there.
The short film that came out of this adventure was entitled Rumble in the Bar, and was actually the first movie that I completed that had somewhat of a story and not just action sequences like what I had done prior. The crazy thing about this film shoot was that yes, we were allowed to use the location, but it had to be before the opening of the cafe, so we could film there starting at 6 a.m. every morning till maybe around 9 a.m. And that film shoot lasted for a good week or so.
Behind me we have a very special building that is really close to my heart. Since I was a kid, it's this building right here. It's actually the old building for the EEC International School, which was the school that actually taught me English. It's the place where I went to from ages 6 to 9. I did my first, second, and third grade here. It's still in my old childhood neighborhood, and I'm so glad that the building is still here, still standing.
On a nostalgia note, the EEC International School will always remain fondly in my heart, as it was literally my first introduction to English, but it was also a really beautiful place to learn, filled with really kind teachers and people from extremely international backgrounds. Plus I kinda like the fact that we had to wear uniforms. This is also where I met one of my best friends, Imran Siddiqui, which I have kept in touch with for all these years and even interviewed in one of my previous episodes.
Well, okay, that concludes my tour of my childhood neighborhood. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. We're ending it in a small, typical street of Brussels, a little side street as you can tell. So please be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, leave me a comment too if you would like me to maybe visit another area of Brussels or Belgium. As you can tell, even though I live in Los Angeles, I'm not scared to travel. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.